Hey, welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. Glad you could join me. Oh, I can guarantee you will learn something, you will have some fun, and you will gain some insights this week on the show. Phil Swain joins me. Friend of mine, NAVHDA judge, extraordinaire. We'll talk about all of that and some recent awards. Versatile dog training legend. We'll talk about training, we'll talk about hunting, we'll talk about hunting tips and hunt test advice if you're in the season of the hunt test or even a field trial. This guy knows his stuff and he will help you succeed by helping your dog succeed. I'm so looking forward to this, but beware, we have plenty more on the agenda as well. Our Handle It segment. Speaking of training, I'll talk about what I think is the most essential piece of training gear. And then just in a moment or two, we'll talk about the one thing a partner should avoid doing, a hunting partner, that is. I asked you on social media, boy, some of the insights there, very interesting. So stand by for that in just a few moments. It's all made possible by Sage and Breaker, Pointer Shotguns, Mid-Valley Clays, and Shooting School. TrulockChokes Tubes, MidwayUSA.com, Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, LandTrust.com, ESPAmerica.com, and HiViz Shooting Systems. Yeah, we're out there every day, weather be damned, trying to get better at bird hunting, and that is in large part thanks to Flick's continued desire to become better. And, of course, I'm glad to support him in that, such as it is. We've been having a great time, and things are going extremely well. So, yeah, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. But in the meanwhile, here's what we're up to these days. I'm lucky enough to have a couple big bird launchers, so I can put a couple pigeons into each one. So we're working on covey flushes right now, and I kind of alluded to it last time, and I'll just explain again because I've had a few questions on it. I'm not flying all the birds at one moment, whether it's a bird in each or two birds in each. The idea of stretching that hold, that point, whatever you want to call it, by convincing a dog that may not be the only bird right there. So I better stand still and wait and see if there's other birds. That's an old-timer's trick from way back before there were bird launchers, but it's working. And I'm frankly kind of pleased that I remembered that one from way back. He's doing great on his steadiness even when the young birds don't fly very far and he can see them, but also on the dead bird that I'm throwing as a result. I'm not killing birds yet. That'll come when we're ready for it. The objective there, of course, is bang, dead bird on the ground, stay steady. That is a major step for us. Yeah, it's working so far. I'll keep you posted there. You are doing much the same. In fact, steadiness seems to be the highest priority with a lot of people. I'm not surprised, but there's also some things that are important to you as we get ready for next hunting season. So I thought it'd be fun to ask you all on social media, what is the one thing a hunting partner should avoid doing? Boy, pay attention if you ever bring somebody along or if you've ever been brought along. Jeff Detraz says, let the owner handle the dog. It won't listen to you anyway. Absolutely true. John Kozlowski, always insightful, John. Walking ahead of you. There's no rush. Relax. Lance Larson, thanks a lot. Breathe deep, everybody. Taking everything so serious. Enjoy the day, no matter what the outcome. Remember, you're out with dogs and having fun. You could be working. Yeah, Digger Rife, absolutely. Criticizing your dog. That's very much a no-no. In fact, I think I said it recently somewhere around a campfire. Hey, if your dog was better, we'd be hunting with him. Okay, the usual, don't shoot my dog. Yes, absolutely. Enjoy the day. Don't talk to your host's dog. Don't criticize it. Don't be competitive, says George Cummins. Absolutely right. Gun safety from Olson's Gun Dogs. Gun safety. Watch where you're pointing your gun. No shooting low birds. All of the above. Yeah, Bud Ship, great to hear from a friend of Clint LaFerry. Clint was the picture in that post. Yeah, that was a lot of fun, those shoots we did in, where were we? Iowa, I think, when we did that. Yeah, Jake and Oatner says, don't get upset when your dog brings you the bird that they shot. I think that works both ways, but anyway, you get the idea there. Some great stuff out there. Don't holler at my dog. Hugh Strickland has a beautiful picture of, I think you've got a Boykin Spaniel there, Hugh. Beautiful dog. Nice tailgate shot there. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right, don't ruin my hunt by getting outwardly upset by minor mistakes. John Simon has some great advice. Hey, man, like I said, relax. Don't take a bird from my dog and don't tell my dog what to do, says Aaron Gotteridge. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Very good. Yeah. Oh, Nancy Worth, thank you for reaching out. Been a long time. Miss ya. Don't shoot in the direction of the film crew, she says. Yeah, that's what do we call that? An occupational hazard in the TV business. All good. Thank you so much. Sure enjoyed reading those. If you want to see them, they're on every single social page I work with. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. They're all there. You'll learn something, whether you're a host or a guest. And all of that is made possible by Pro Plan Sport dog food from Purina. Learn more about them and their formulations at ProPlansport.com. You know, only one dog food brand fuels the most sporting dog champions. That's Pro Plan Sport. Yeah, trainers know it. Field trialers know it. If you're working dogs to their max, they need the things that are in Pro Plan Sport, including omega-3 fatty acid. Yeah, that and the glucosamine that's in the formulation help joint health and mobility throughout their training and their hunting life. Yeah, your dog needs nutrition that performs as hard as they do. Learn more at ProPlansport.com. Speaking of performance, HiVizSights.com has a way to improve your shooting. I'm working hard on this, still working on the video, if the weather would just cooperate. HiViz sights.com is where you will see that, among other places. The idea being, yes, no matter your shooting style, the bead, the front sight, whatever you want to call it, is critical because subconsciously your head has to see the muzzle of the gun as well as the target to create the right relationship so you can actually swing into that target the correct way. That's what those patented light pipes will do for you. They're easy to install and they're easy to interchange different colored light pipes for different conditions. Learn more about how all that works at HiVizSights.com. HiVizSights.com. Just put one of those on one of my pointer shotguns for that video, and it's working great. PointerShotguns.com is where you should be shopping, and then send the link to whoever's buying your Father's Day gift. Maybe it's time for you to upgrade, depending on, whatever that means to you, from a pump to a semi-auto, from a semi to a over and under, etc., etc. Maybe you're looking at small gauges. They're all available at PointerShotguns.com. Of course, you will shop for everything from the configuration to the metal colors, if you will, from nickel to blued to case color to Cerakote. It's all there. Learn more about the small gauges and all the types available for, maybe for Father's Day for you at PointerShotguns.com. It's always fun to talk with him when he's not judging your dog, that is. And that's Phil Swain, and I'll get to Phil in just a moment. But first, let me just bring you up to speed. Phil has just recently received the Jim and Bobby Applegate Award for outstanding volunteer contributions to NAVHDA. Yeah, the North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association. I've been a member for a long time, but Phil has been a member for, well, I think they invented dogs about the time Phil joined. He's member number 56. The Applegate Award is for a long-term commitment to NAVHDA. I mean, this guy has done it all. Been a NAVHDA judge since 78. Yeah, since last century. Evaluating nearly 2,700 dogs at 360 test days. That's just the beginning. But Phil Swain, we are indebted to you for so many things. Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast.
Well, thank you. Your introduction is more than gracious, and I much appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, it's funny. We all join NAVHDA for our own reasons. A lot of times our feet are held to the fire. I doubt that was your case. And beyond joining, we all stay with it for any number of reasons. And I'm just, I'm wondering, after so many years of so many dogs in so many places, what kind of top line insight do you have about, us and how we relate to our dogs, and we test and we hunt them?
Well, that's an interesting question. For me, staying in NAVHDA, it's been mostly about the dogs. Because I've needed to learn a lot. I didn't grow up in a hunting family, and so I came to hunting late. I was actually in a Navy P3 squadron, and I was in Brunswick, Maine, and one of my squadron mates had Irish setters, and I didn't know anything about dogs, and so I thought that Irish setters were a great bird dog. And,
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, some of them are nowadays. I mean, they've gone back and created the red setter. Matter of fact, I have a really good friend in Missouri named Cliff Fleming who has some of the most spectacular Irish setters that I've seen, but they are, the breeders have gone back and bred some more pointer and English setter into the dogs. And so they don't have the long hair and so forth that a lot of bench show type Irish setters have. Anyway, so my squadron mate had these Irish setters, and I thought they were beautiful. And my wife grew up, her dad was a forest ranger, and so in Maine, everybody always talked about going partridge hunting. And so I didn't know what that was. So my squadron mate had a male and a female Irish setter, and they had a litter of puppies, and so we got a puppy. And I determined that I needed to be more outdoorsy than I had ever been. So I decided I was going to train that Irish setter to be a bird dog. And so that's what started me off on my NAVHDA journey.
It's funny. A lot of us come to it from a similar route. I was the same way. We got a dog because I lost the argument about not getting a dog. Turns out that dog, one of the first times we ran him in a big field across from the house, he pointed a pheasant. And I thought, well, if he can do that, then I guess I'd better go buy a shotgun. And, again, late in life, like you, and it's just been a passion ever since. You study dogs, you study people who handle dogs, you're a bird hunter, all those things. What is the most important thing we can do as dog owner hunters to be better at dog handling?
For me, I think two things. The first thing is I think you need to understand that a dog is a dog 24/7, 365. It doesn't stop being a dog. I mean, dogs have their own temperament, and you could even say that each dog has its own personality, and within a breed there are certain personality or temperament strains which tend to be more predominant. But I think that's the first thing, is to remember that a dog is always a dog. And so the second thing is recognizing that a dog is always going to act and respond like a dog acts and responds. Being able to communicate with the dog in a way that the dog understands.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily coercive. They respond a lot. They respond to a lot of things that we don't understand real well, like body language and voice tone. So I think those two things, just remembering that a dog is a dog all the time, and when you start to communicate with the dog, you have to communicate in a way that the dog understands.
Yeah, it may be verbal, it may be nonverbal, like you said. Is there anything, I think, I wrote a book called What the Dogs Taught Me. And if I'd been smarter, I would have put something else in the title about just watching your dog. You're out in the field, you're sitting around watching football, it doesn't matter. Just being more aware of what the dog is doing or not doing at the time. Does that make any sense to you?
Oh, absolutely. I think bonding with a dog, in any training that you're going to do with the dog, we always talk about engagement and having the dog engage with you. And one of the ways I think that you can kind of measure that or know how the dog is engaged with you is, for example, this morning I was in the kitchen getting my breakfast together, and my dogs were in the other room laying on their mats, and they were zonked out. They were totally asleep. And as I started to get food out, all of a sudden the dog appears at my knee, so that the dogs are aware of us. My wife walks into the house, and one of our dogs just is really engaged with her, and she's just, she's her shadow.
Yeah.
So I think when you start training a dog, engagement is demonstrated by you are the most important thing in that dog's world when you start training. So the dog is watching and paying attention and is very alert to what you're doing.
I can't agree more. And I've said this before over and over again. It was driven home again yesterday. We had a great training day. My guy Flick, it's an obscure breed called the German wire-haired pointer. You might have seen one or two over the course of your career. But he was, I can't describe it any better than to say he was sitting on, we let him on the couch. He's on the couch basically idolizing me. And I'm thinking, no, I'm not worthy. But that training day was so good. It was everything a bird dog would want. It all happened to him, and I was the bringer of all of that. And so I'm convinced that if you train well, one of the end results is your dog really likes you because you are the bringer of birds. And you ever seen, it could be food, so it's twice a day, it's food at our house too, but they I think they really do correlate the fun times they have with you, fun in their world, however they describe it, with you, and it works in terms of building that bond.
Yeah, one of the, I recently wrote an article for the Versatile Hunting Dog magazine that NAVHDA publishes, and it was titled "Some Formerly Unwritten Suggestions for Training a Utility Dog." And one of the things that I emphasize in there is praise. We frequently just don't praise the dog enough. You know, we get in our mind, you need to do this and you need to do it this way. And, you know, we forget sometimes that training for a dog comes in stages. And if the dog is not getting something, you need to step back into what part of that training the dog did right. So you go back and then you build from there. And so remembering to praise or reward, like I say, 90% of my training is reward-based as opposed to coercive.
Yeah, absolutely true. And you know, when I'm hunting with a pro trainer or even a guide who trains his own dogs, I'll ask them, you know, what's the ratio? Praise to whatever you want to call it, correction. You use the term coercion. I like that term. I'm going to steal it. Most of them come around to about 7 bits of praise versus 1 correction. And of course, to do that, what that means is you got to set the dog up for success.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you know, we all develop the negative response to what a dog is doing. You know, we tell them no or stop that, and what we don't do is we don't use terms like yes in using a voice of approbation when the dog does something right or gets it right, and just, you know, throwing your arms out to the side and saying, yes, good dog, you know, with that enthusiasm, you know, and a dog that's engaged with you will really respond to that kind of not only body language, but voice tone. And it just, you know, you can watch, you can see their ears come up and their tail is up, and the dog is excited about that because most of the dogs that I work with in the versatile breeds with NAVHDA and so forth are dogs that like doing the work and they like doing it for us. Yeah. You know, I often remark that I think God had a lot of fun when he made dogs because they like us, they like doing stuff for us, and so if they understand what we're asking, they're seeking that encouragement and approval, I think.
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about it. And you use a term there that I really like, engagement. And, you know, if you watch some of the other dog worlds, they're big on the engagement by more praise. You know, if you think about what better way to engage with a dog than to say, hey, you're doing a great job. As opposed to, hey, you're doing a crappy job, stop that. So you have more opportunities to do that, and then the dog starts looking to you for direction, et cetera, et cetera. It works pretty well, doesn't it?
Well, I think it does. You know, my sister-in-law trains protection dogs, and she's worked with a guy that trains protection dogs professionally. And if you look at the drug sniffing dogs and the protection dogs, the canine with the police use, they always have a ball or some kind of a toy that the dog loves. You know, and for those dogs, for a lot of the protection dogs, the prey drive that we look for in terms of a dog driving after birds, those dogs like to bite. And you watch one of those dogs when they're biting somebody in an exercise or something like that, and their eyes are bright, their ears are up, their tail is up. They are enjoying the bite, and so the reward for them is that toy that their handler or their trainer plays with them. For our dogs, the reward is getting that bird in their mouth. And so, you know, using that as an incentive in training and just, like I say, keeping it positive to the extent possible is, and I think just rewarding that prey drive and building on that prey drive for our dogs is an important thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. In fact, I've used the term a few times. Getting to fetch is what we're really after. At least
Yep.
in the dog's mind, that's all that matters. So we ought to remember that and use it strategically. We could go on deep into the weeds on the philosophy, but I want to get a little more practical. Phil Swain is, among other things, a NAVHDA judge, a great trainer, a bird hunter. Oh, and what I like most about Phil Swain is he's a former tuba player, just like me. Here on the Upland Nation podcast, we promise not to play for you or even talk about when we used to play, but I do want to talk about some of the things that happen, say, at a NAVHDA test. You judged almost 3,000 dogs. Are there some things, and not necessarily to pass the test, but are there some things that you see that happen frequently, are common dog handling goofs that we make that probably come out a lot when you're walking around with your pencil and your judging sheet?
I think one of the biggest things, we talked a little bit about body language and how dogs read us and how dogs are engaged with us. And so when we come to a test and we are nervous and so we're overreacting to circumstances or something, or I think basically what happens, Scott, is we get our egos out front and we are projecting our egos through what our dog does.
Yeah.
And our dogs read that, and because they read that, a lot of times they will respond in not in a normal way because they don't understand why our emotions are being projected so much. So I think in response to that one of the things is it's important to I get nervous when I'm having a dog judged in a test, but trying to maintain a calmness in myself and handle the dog the same way in a testing situation that I do in a training situation, without the negative, of course, is an important thing. And the dog reads that. Is this a normal day that I'm out here to have a good time and do my thing, or is there something wrong with the boss that they're communicating right from the get-go that I'm doing something wrong?
Yeah, I've seen it. I've lived it. I've been there and done that. There's a great book called The Other End of the Leash, and maybe you've read it, but it's about that very thing, how what we do, even if we don't know we're doing it, is translating straight down that leash to the dog. Of course, there's not a leash to be found in a NAVHDA test, but the dog is reading us just like we're reading them. And I've seen it happen a lot. So that's something.
One of the things that I'm sorry, did I interrupt?
No, go ahead.
One of the things that the judges will say to a handler as you start into a test, whether it's natural ability for the young dog that's 16 months of age or younger, or for the more advanced dogs in the utility prep or utility test, is I want you to handle your dog like you would handle your dog if you're hunting.
Yeah.
And so sometimes instead of taking that advice to heart, a handler will walk at a much slower pace than they normally would when they're hunting, or they are so nervous that they just take off and they don't give the dog time to establish. The dog has a range that it likes to work away from you. And a cooperative dog tends to work to the face and chest of the handler. So whichever direction you're going, generally, the dog is going to be out in front. And so people will walk at a pace that is not their normal hunting pace. And the judges, if you're going too fast or if you're not going fast enough, often the judge will say you need to pick up the pace. The dog's waiting on you, or just slow down and give the dog a little time, and so forth. And then the other thing is when you first release a dog in a test, generally speaking, the dog is excited. They understand that this is an exciting environment, and they want to get going. So their initial casts, maybe for the first 2, 3, maybe even 5 minutes, are going to be really long casts. And so as a handler, you need to recognize that the dog needs to get that out of their system and then settle in and start working for you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people figured that out a long time ago in some of the AKC tests where they have a field that has no birds in it, and that's where you start. And it saved my bacon once or twice. And I just got to thank you again for that idea of the dog keys in on your face. I never thought about the chest, but you clued me into that a long time ago when I was shooting poppers for a puppy test way back in the day when there was a chapter over there below you and over there from me. And I've used it ever since. Of course, everybody reminds me that I do have a face for radio, and why any dog would want to look at it is another question. But it seemed to pay off more than once over the years. Well, we're just getting warmed up around here. It's the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, the host. That's Phil Swain. This guy's got more on his curriculum vitae than most of us ever will when it comes to dogs and dog training and evaluating dogs and all of that. Phil will be back in just a moment. I will just pay a few of the bills around here, and then we'll get back to it. We also have the Handle It segment coming up where I'm going to talk about the most important piece of training gear. So, Phil, training gear, right after this word from landtrust.com. Get outdoors without the crowds. That's what they're all about. You can book exclusive access on private lands for your next outdoor experience. 1 day, 2 days, hell, you can have the whole season if you want. Exclusive private land access takes the stress out of planning your upland hunt so you can play with your dog. That's the whole idea. You can open a free account. Costs you nothing to shop around and see what you can find wherever your destination is. Go to landtrust.com. Learn more and just poke around and see if there's a place you want to go. And once you're there, screw in those TrulockChokes and add another bird to your bag. Trulock, T-R-U-L-O-C-K, TrulockChokes.com. These guys think like engineers because they're looking for the best materials for every choke tube, and then they're making life easy for us. All their choke tubes are marked on the head and the body with the name of the constriction, so you don't have to figure things out. You don't need a magnifying glass. The exact diameter is engraved on the body, just in case. Don't forget they got a lifetime warranty, satisfaction guarantee. And if you go to the website, TrulockChokes.com, you'll find plenty of incentives that will save you $1 or $2 here and there. TrulockChokes.com. Welcome back to Phil Swain, NAVHDA judge, clinic leader, bird hunter, distinguished Navy veteran, among other things. Phil, I'm sure having a good time. I hope I'm not getting in your way.
Oh, you're great. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Yeah, okay. I got to get it out of my system. You were at Northern Arizona University. You played tuba. Were you in the marching band, or what did you do there?
Yeah, I needed a scholarship to do my undergraduate work, and so I was fortunate enough to get an instrumental music scholarship. And so I played the sousaphone and the tuba, and yes, I was in the marching band. I was in the concert orchestra, and long ago and far away, I also sang in the choir. And I was not a music major, but playing the sousaphone and the tuba got me a little help on my tuition and helped me get through college.
I love it. Yeah, same for me. Yeah, everybody needs a good tuba player.
You could play Tubby the tuba.
If I had a nickel for every time I played that thing. In fact, I promise everybody we'll go away from this in a moment. I owned the tuba that was played on the original Disney recording of Tubby the Tuba.
Wow, great.
Yeah, it was incredible. That's as far as I'll go, or we'll be down another rabbit hole nobody cares about but you and me. You know, one of the highest priorities, and I ask everybody all the time, highest priorities for us are something that I'm working on right now, and that is steadiness. And we all have a definition of that, you know, whether it's steady to wing and shot, steady to wing, shot, and fall. It doesn't matter. Let's talk a little bit about that whole topic and what are some things we can do that maybe we're not doing. And I'll just, recall that, before you came on with us, I talked about an old timer's trick where the trainers would put a bird on the ground, and then he put another bird in a hole in the ground right next to that bird. So the first bird would fly, the second bird hopefully would pop up out of the hole. The dog starts thinking, oh, there's more than one bird here. I better hold still for a little longer. So that's one that I'm working on right now in a new 21st century way. But what about other things that you might be able to help us with when it comes to getting our dog to basically hold still a little longer?
You know, one of the things that I learned watching a professional trainer, videos by a professional trainer named Michael Ellis. He trains primarily protection dogs. But then there's a guy in my local NAVHDA chapter named Ron Garrison who introduced this to me. And a lot of people in chapters around, at least in the Pacific Northwest now, start with a training board.
Yeah.
Where you put the dog on that board, and it's a reward-based program where you get the dog 1 foot on the board and they get a reward, 2 feet on the board, and eventually they get all 4 feet on the place board. Or you can use a dog dish or a rug, anything that is different from the ground around. And as the dog learns to maintain their position on that board, then we get a pigeon and put it in a harness and put it on a 5 or 6 foot long string, and we can fly that pigeon around that dog while they're woed on that place board and just get them acclimated to just staying there, even though that bird, you can get to the point where you can actually have the bird sitting on the dog's head.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that Howard Meyer, who is a guy who has mentored me a lot in training, particularly in steadiness, is the dog needs to learn self-discipline with birds around. And Howard has bird pens where he has chukar and pheasant in the pens. And he will take a young dog into the pen and have the dog on lead. And initially, of course, the dog will be lunging and trying to catch the birds and so forth. But just that the dog needs to learn that self-discipline, that they're not going to catch the bird. They're not going to be allowed to catch the bird while they're in there. And so that kind of desensitization for the dog in that environment. And so then, when you transition into the field, I think a lot of times people are really anxious to get a bird planted and shoot a bird over the dog before the dog is really steady and has been sufficiently desensitized to wanting to get that bird. And so I just think building that, when I have birds planted out in the field and I'm confident of my dog's steadiness, I may stand back from the dog a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes and just let the dog stand there engaged in the scent cone from that bird and just not walk in there right away. And just allow the dog to learn that it needs to control itself. And then sometimes once the bird is launched, if I harvest the bird after that, which means I shoot it, I expect the dog to stay there. And so part of the desensitization to go get that prize, which is the bird in the dog's mouth, I will walk out and pick up the bird. And I will bring it back and show it to the dog and then just stick it in my vest and go on. So the dog says, okay, the boss has control of this situation, and I just need to learn to control myself. So does that answer kind of what you were asking about, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely, and in a good way. I took away two things from it. Number one is most of us, and you've seen it in a million training days for sure, and maybe even at some puppy tests, most of us don't expose our dog to birds frequently enough. The second thing is it's a reward. Bird in mouth is the reward, but it is earned, and it's not always going to happen no matter what. And I'm working again on a little bit of that as well. Most of my pigeons fly away to live another day. And Flick is learning, still learning that, flyaways are all right, because at some point when I'm mature and I'm good, one of them will fall down and I'll get to put it in my mouth. So I think delayed gratification is one of those things that you're really teaching with that, aren't you?
Yeah, I think so. And the other thing is, going along with that line of thinking, the reward comes from when the boss, who is the pack leader, allows me to have the reward. So just like I get my food, the boss is controlling this reward for me. I'm not controlling it, the boss is. Yeah,
the bringer of birds.
Yeah, that's right.
And they start putting those two things together, then all of a sudden you're a team instead of two people going off on different tangents, for that matter.
Yeah, one of the things you will see sometimes in the field when you're judging a dog, a particularly cooperative dog, is they're pointed on a bird, and as the handler approaches, the engaged dog may turn their head and look to make sure the boss is coming up. Sometimes when I'm hunting pheasant, if I'm guiding a hunt, and my dog is on point and they're a ways out, 50 or 100 yards out, I use a Garmin electronic collar, and so it has both a vibrate and a tone on it as opposed to electronic stimulation. And so sometimes I will just vibrate the collar to let the dog know, okay, I'm coming.
Yeah.
And I have built that when I'm training, that the dog knows, okay, the vibration means you're doing well, and it's overlaid with a verbal command. Good, keep it up. Just kind of reassuring the dog, okay, you're doing great, and I'm coming.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer. I only wish I had done that instead of using the vibration for something else, because now I don't have any really quiet ways to encourage a dog at distance without scaring the birds off. That's the big problem if you're yelling from 50 yards away. So next right. Dog, I promise I'll be doing that. You mentioned guiding a pheasant hunt, and you're an avid hunter, and you've been there and done that. Can you think of a great hunting and a hunting dog story that maybe has a moral to it? It's got some sort of lesson for us.
It's I guess a couple of things on that point. I was hunting I was hunting Mearns quail in Arizona, and it had been a long day. It's nice to be able to go to New Mexico or Arizona after the weather's really gotten lousy here in Oregon. So you can go down there, and their seasons are typically open for the first week or maybe even 2 weeks in February. Mm-hmm. But in any event, I was down there Mearns quail hunting, and it had been a long day, and it was a warm day, and it was late in the afternoon. And, I was done. I was tired, and was in the bottom of a canyon, and there were draws coming down into that canyon. So late in the day, the wind currents were coming down those draws into the canyon.
Yeah.
And I had a dog that was running in front of me, and I just, basically I was done hunting. I was tired. And I watched this dog, and he went by one of those draws, and I saw him pick up his head and turn and look, and he started up that draw. And I thought, oh man, Ace, I don't want to climb up there again. And I, like I said, one of the tools that I use is a Garmin collar that has a GPS on it, so I can watch where the dog is. And I watched him on the GPS as he went up that draw. And sure enough, about 200 yards up there, he pointed, and he was pointed on a covey of Mearns quail. And so I guess two things from that story. Continuing, the dog was tired too, but he didn't stop hunting, which goes back to what we talked about earlier. That dogs continue to be dogs 365, 24/7. But watching him use his nose to go up there, to go up that draw and then point those birds was just it was a great illustration for me of how sensitive that dog's nose is. And so the point of that is that I often see, I've gotten really interested in the dog's physiology, in the dog's scenting physiology, the physical characteristics of that, the vomeronasal gland that's in the back of the top of the roof of the mouth, and watching a dog sometimes bite the air as they're running through the field, forcing that scent up over there. It's just one of those things. I'm trying to make a point here that watching the dog and what they do, and how I do a lot of stuff in playing with my dogs, encouraging them to use their nose to look for things, hiding things, and so forth. And it's just fun to watch.
I agree. I mean, we all do it in parts of our training, but we probably don't do it enough. If you're teaching a young dog how to track, sometimes you're putting food bits on the ground and things like that. But watching the dog and how they react to that stuff, it's like watching a good poker player play a bad poker player. That they use the term tells. And some of those are, in a poker game, are bad, but in a bird hunting situation, I love thinking I know what the dog is thinking sometimes, and get another step ahead or two every once in a while. It sure works for me.
I agree.
You're a short hair guy, if I recall. Yeah. So tell me about your dogs.
Well, I have two short hairs. One I got from a fellow judge named Tom Swayze, who's in Colorado. I was over there judging a test one weekend, and a couple of my dogs were getting older, and I kind of been looking for a pup. And Tom had a litter on the ground, and he had a pup who had not been spoken for, and so I consulted with my wife and brought him home, and then that dog turned out to be a really, really good dog for me. I really appreciated him, and so then I became very interested in finding a good bitch to breed him with, because I wanted to see if the puppy would be as good as he is. And so we did breed him. We found a nice bitch, and so we have a puppy from that breeding, and she has met my expectations.
Wow.
She's just been a great dog. So we just have two short hairs now.
Well, that's plenty. And I'm glad it turned out. Boy, number one, Tom's judged many of my dogs as well, and great guy, and I'm not surprised he's a pretty good breeder too. Some of the stuff that we agonize over, for example, how old was that pup when you brought him home?
Well, that's interesting because when the puppy was whelped, my wife and I were in Alaska doing some training for a chapter up there. Mm-hmm. So I asked Tom to keep the pup for a while. So I don't know, Scott. I think a lot of people say that a puppy can be brought home at 8 to 10 weeks, and I think when we brought, the dog's name is Skipper, because we were in Alaska, and then it was Father's Day, and so he was, I think he was 12 or 13, maybe 14 weeks old before we brought him home.
Wow.
The puppy that he sired, I think we brought her home at 9 or 10 weeks. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, and I think somewhere in that time span is what's recommended. I'm not a breeder per se, so, and I think breeders, I would ask somebody who is a breeder that has expertise in that area, but I think generally it's 8 to 10 weeks, or prior to 11 weeks, bring a dog home.
Yeah, but your male did fine, and that might be because Tom was doing all the right things with the litter at that point.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, the dogs had been exposed, and he had property where he could put the pups out and run them around, and so yes, you're exactly right.
How about introductions to birds? I seem to get a lot of panicked phone calls and emails from people who say, my dog either is not birdy at all, doesn't give a rip about going out in the field and looking for birds, or they're terrified by birds. Is there a common mistake we make that we ought to avoid, or is there a smarter way to introduce birds and bird parts to a very young dog?
That's an interesting question, and I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer it because I've made a lot of mistakes. I had a young dog, and I put a bird in a launcher in my backyard with that dog. And,
oh yeah.
That dog went out there and was terrified of that bird, and it took a while to get over that. And then I remember years and years ago when we were in Virginia, I had I don't remember now. I think I had a wing on a string.
Oh yeah.
On the end of a fishing pole, and I was dancing that around in front of the puppy, trying to get the puppy to point it. And there was an old sage dog trainer there, and he said, I don't think that's a very good technique. I wouldn't do that. So, I don't do that either.
Yeah.
And so, the initial thing that I would do is try to take a non-aggressive bird. That means something other than a pheasant, probably, like a pigeon or a chukar, and try to dizzy that bird and just let the dog find the bird. And if the bird gets up and flies away, if the pup hesitates and points, and wants to chase the bird, then I'm fine with that. And that's all I need to do. Once I see that initial point or that initial interest in the bird, the dog doesn't need a lot of additional exposure to birds. I need to get the basic obedience done.
Yeah.
Before I go on with more bird contact. Anyway, that's but I think to what you said, Scott, I think if you're going to have a bird dog, the dog has to be exposed to birds. It's just that I mentioned a few minutes ago that a lot of times people will go to a training day and what they want to do is they want to shoot birds over their dog, and they haven't got the basic obedience done. And I think that's counterproductive.
If you wanted to rank basic obedience skills, and just refresh us on what you think those are.
Recall is the biggest thing, you know, and this goes back to what we discussed when we started this conversation. Having the dog engaged with you. So you need to have the dog in an environment that you can control, a fenced yard, or if necessary, on a 20-foot lead or whatever, so that the dog thinks that you are the most important thing out there. Now, a puppy is going to take off and run off and want to explore things, and they're waking up that nose and everything. But I think it's important to keep that dog in a protected environment.
Yeah.
So if you're in a big field, that's okay as long as it's a protected environment. There aren't roads and stuff. And so recall is very, very important. So I'm gonna make sure that I'm 70 or 80% sure that if I call that dog, the dog's gonna come to me, and that's recall.
Yeah.
And then I think the dog needs to understand a command like leave it or out. I think that's important. You know, and I just so I think those are just a couple of basics. You know, and then if the dog's going to be in the house, the dog needs to know where it can go and where it can't go. You know, our dogs are allowed in the family room, and you mentioned earlier that you have a couch that you let the dog get up on. Okay, if you're going to do that, that's fine. But our dogs can go in the family room and the kitchen, and that's it. They don't have access to the rest of the house.
Yeah.
Some people want them in their bedrooms and everything. That's an individual thing. But that's just what it is for our dogs. So the answer to your question is, I think being able to recall the dog, and for the dog to understand when you say leave it or no or out, to understand what that needs, what that means.
Yeah.
You know, the other things like down or whoa or walking at heel, those are important, but they're less important than the recall and the leave it or out commands, I think.
Well, so do I, and apparently we're in good company. I asked that question on Facebook a couple weeks ago, and that's exactly what everybody has to say. So we're all in accordance on that one, folks.
Good, I got one right.
Oh, you got more than one right. Phil Swain over there on that end. He's in the Portland, Oregon area. I'm in the drier side of the state right now. Scott Linden here on the Upland Nation podcast. Phil, I want you to leave us with one piece of essential hunting gear that you don't leave home without.
I have a two-tone whistle that I have used for years. You know, one end of the whistle has the standard P in the whistle, so when you blow on it, it trills.
Yeah. And
the other end of the whistle is a whistle that I can vary the tone on it. And so and I see a lot of times that people will come to a test and they either forget or they haven't trained the dog to respond to the whistle.
Yeah.
And you know, that's an essential tool for me.
What do you use the P-less whistle for?
That's really an enforcement command. Hey, you didn't respond when I gave you the variable tone, which is just kind of a tweet, like that. And so when I get on the P side of that whistle, it's like, hey, buddy, I gave you a tone to pay attention to me. And if you don't, I'm coming for you.
See, my problem is that's what my vibrate function is for.
Yeah.
So it's not not used quite the same way as you, but it's good information. And I've played with another whistle style as well, and I like that. And maybe on the next pup I'll get around to it. Well, we could go on, but you've got things to do. I know you're getting ready for a trip to Alaska and a trip to New Mexico. Yeah, both times helping out with NAVHDA. Once again, it's no wonder you recently received that Jim and Bobby Applegate Award. It was well-deserved. Phil Swain, I'll see you at a training day or a test sometime down the road. Thank you so much for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast.
Well, it's very gracious for you to give me the opportunity. I really appreciate it, Scott. You do such a great job. I enjoy your articles and Pointing Dog Journal and other places, and your podcast is great. So, Mutual Admiration Society. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.
I hope you learned as much as I did from that. There's always something in, Phil just has to show up, and it just oozes out of him. There's insights and knowledge in there that we can't get from a lot of other people these days, and for that I am grateful. Phil, thanks again. You all, thanks for listening as well. We've got some more to talk about in terms of essential gear. The one thing that I think is going to help you become a better dog trainer and thus become a better bird hunter is all coming up in just a moment. First, let me remind you that MidwayUSA.com carries just about everything you'll need. Shooting, hunting, and the outdoors. Yeah, camping, fishing, fly fishing. Yeah, it's all target shooting. Yep, I'm using the heck out of all of those things with them because they deliver fast. They've got an incredible delivery and package handling system, I'll call it. I'm sure that the experts call it something else. From youth shotguns to socks for your lovely wife, it's all right there at MidwayUSA.com. This time of year, if you're having trouble finding target ammo, they got it in stock. I just to replenish my inventory. They've always got a number of choices in that area. So if you're finicky about what you're looking for, poke around. You'll find something at MidwayUSA.com. And SageandBreaker.com will take care of your gun. Well, they'll give you the ability to take better care of your gun. Everything they make is crafted at the highest caliber. It's all lifetime warranty. From gun cleaning mats to lubrication and to cleaning supplies of various sort, tools, scoped rifle cases, shotgun cases. Oh, I really like those bore cleaners. You drop the weight through, you clean it one pull and your bore is clean. It's all available and all in stock right now. But sign up for their mailing list because that's how you'll find out about the future sales and new products before everybody else. Yeah, do yourself a favor. It's almost Father's Day. Get on the mailing list at SageandBreaker.com. Well, I was on an airplane going to a little place in Northeast Oregon, and my seatmate was Bodo Winterhelt. Now, Bodo is a legend in the NAVHDA world, one of the founders. We talked about all of that. It was hard to not be starstruck, but it was, I was trying to play it cool. But I asked him the same question I just asked Phil. What is the most important training tool, piece of equipment, gear, whatever it was? He said, I hurt my back years ago, so I made this thing. Now everybody calls it a woe table. You can call it whatever you want, but it's a training table. And that pretty much is one of the bazillion contributions Bodo Winterhelt made to the dog training world, and I am still grateful to him for that insight, among others. It's easy to make. Everybody should find multiple uses for it, whether it's to save your own back, to keep your dog more attentive when you're training certain skills, want to doctor or groom that dog, build a training table. Hey, if I can build one, anybody can. This music major isn't allowed to use power tools, and I still built it. And I rebuilt it again last weekend. Just Google dog training table, and you'll find one. Used to be on the NAVHDA website. I couldn't find it the last time I checked, but there's a million versions of it. You don't need plans. It's you cut a 4x8 sheet of plywood or anything else like that. Probably got to be at least a ½ inch in thickness, though, because you're going to hold some dog weight. You rip that down the middle. You take one of those 2x4s and cut it in half. So you got 2 ramps going up to the 8-foot long version. Put it on sawhorses or get fancy and build some legs for it. It doesn't matter. Build yourself a training table. You will not regret it. And thank you, Bodo, for coming up with that one. And the Handle It segment this week was brought to you by ESPAmerica.com. Hit the target, save your hearing. Yeah, these guys have pioneered so many aspects of custom-fit digital hearing protection. It's hard to start and then end within one podcast. But one thing that I'm really appreciative of, and I just was reminded of it when I was shooting on last Sunday morning. It was windy, except in my ears, because of the way they've designed those custom-fit, carefully molded hearing protection devices. The microphone is in the right place, and the design is correct so that your ear actually blocks some of the wind too. But it's all supplemented by that patented software that eliminates most of the wind noise. Learn more about what I'm talking about. Maybe you are more of a techie than I am. Go to ESPAmerica.com. And go to midvalleyclays.com when you're shopping for a new shotgun. Subgauge Central, yeah, they've got it figured out. Dave Fiedler is a hunter, champion target shooter, always has the subgauges in stock no matter what you're looking for. Dave will be glad to counsel with you on buying your next shotgun. And then once you decide, now or later, call him up. He'll ship anywhere, anytime. MidvalleyClays.com is where you get the number. Talk to Dave Fiedler about your shotgun. Maybe take a lesson. Maybe fit your gun a little bit better. Or just have some fun on all the shooting games over there in Western Oregon. MidvalleyClays.com. Well, thanks, Phil Swain. Great to see you, at least orally, such as it is. Great to hear you, I guess I should say. Always helpful and always insightful. Thank you so much. And thank you if you left a comment and helped out all your fellow hunters on one of the social media pages. If you left a rating or a review, I think I appreciate it. Depends. And thank you to our sponsors who make it all possible. Sage and Breaker, Purina Pro Plan Sport, ESPAmerica, Mid-Valley Clays, TrulockChokes, MidwayUSA.com, LandTrust.com, Pointer Shotguns, and HiViz Shooting Systems. And especially to you, thanks for your support. I sure appreciate it. I appreciate your listening and all your insights. I'm Scott Linden. Thanks for listening to the Upland Nation podcast.